It's the Extremist Movie Debate, and tonight we're talking T2, Trainspotting 2.
I'm Joe.
I'm Ethan, and one of us is going to love it, one of us is going to hate it.
Let the coin decide their fate.
I hate it.
I love it. Hey guys, don't try to scam us or spoilers ahead.
Perfect. This movie has a 78% on Rotten Tomatoes, which makes it certified fresh. Ethan, since you hate this movie, this first question is for you. This comes from Christopher Ora of The Atlantic. Christopher says, a film nowhere near as revelatory as the original, but in some ways more satisfying. The proper closing of a tale that has been left open-ended. So my question to you is, do you feel this film actually provided proper closure to the films? You have 1 minute.
No, I feel like this movie ends on such a cliffhanger. It's like, can we get into spoilers right away?
Yeah.
So Spud and the girl leave them with essentially Johnny Lee Miller and Ewan McGregor. They leave them with $100,000 worth of debt, $100,000 pounds worth of debt, even worse. And they just take off. And so we're thinking like, oh, that's great that they're talking about what's Spud doing now. Oh, he's writing her stories. Oh, that's really great. Good for him. They should be infuriated. They have a lifelong debt that will never pay off because they'll have to live their life completely off the grid now to avoid debt collectors. We don't know what's going to happen to them. They're probably all going to go right back to heroin, and that's terrifying because, there's some sort of redemption in this movie. You see them actually sort of, start to become decent business people and decent humans to each other, and now all of a sudden you know that this life has been set up for them and forcing them to go back to the ways of their habits of the past and all their self-destructive tendencies, and that's heartbreaking, and you don't see it. You want to see it.
Thank you, Ethan. I'm going to have to cut you off there. Joe, you have 30 seconds to respond.
It was all a forced redemption. Like, they only started redeeming themselves because they were backed into a corner, and the only way out of it was honesty and actually owning up to certain things. And on top of that, I think they're finally essentially accepting the karma that is coming their way, because Sick Boy, all he's known for is scamming people and just fucking people and blackmailing people. You see that right at the beginning. And then Renton, you know that he already stole $16,000 from all these people, so he already feels like he owes them something. So it's essentially them just accepting their stake in life.
Ethan, you have 15 seconds to respond.
He doesn't owe Spud anything because he gave him $4,000, and it's not self. I forgot what I was going to talk about. Fuck it.
Okay, Joe, you have a final 15 to respond.
It's because it's a larger acceptance. He's not accepting it from Spud. He's accepting it because he's lived a shitty life, and he's accepting that that's finally coming back to him. And that's essentially what it is as far as being middle-aged at this point in his life, living kind of a decadent lifestyle.
Okay, thank you. I'm sorry. Joe, this next question is for you. This comes from Todd Jorgensen of Cinema Log. Anyone else want to interrupt before I start reading?
I love him.
I remember what I was going to say. It's cool.
Right. Bummer.
Just spit it out real quick.
Nope.
He ain't got no time.
Ain't nobody got time for that. It feels mostly like a ride we've already taken, serving to remind us of the vastly superior film that spawned it. So my question is, did the film feel organic to the story as opposed to just a too late in the game cash grab? You have 1 minute.
No, I think it was organic, primarily based because it wasn't. They just didn't make it up being like, we want more money. Like Irving Welsh, who wrote the original Trainspotting novel, wrote the sequel to Trainspotting. It's called Porno. Came out 10 years after, so they just wanted to wait more than 10 years for this movie, essentially, because Danny Boyle and the rest of the cast didn't think they would look old enough. They didn't think they would age enough in 10 years to justify this sort of we're coming back 20 years later and we've grown so much. They didn't think they could justify that within film, whereas Irving Welsh could within the novels. So no, it's not just a cash grab. It's not just fucking made just because they really wanted to. It is an organic story. And on top of that, it's taking up, the first one is all about intervention and waking up and your youth and trying to grab life before life happens. This is looking at life pass you by, essentially. This is them trying to come to terms with losing out on their life and how they still have a lot of life to go and they don't know what to do with it at this point because they've hit their middle-aged where...
Okay, thank you, Joe. I'm going to stop you there. Ethan, you have 30 seconds.
The movie is a complete cash grab. The movie calls itself a cash grab within the movie. They go to a gravesite and they're sitting there saying, you're only here because you're peddling yourself in nostalgia because you're here for that rush of what once was. And then they, yell at each other like, oh, you lost a kid or you did this. And it's calling the audience out, saying you're you're here because you really liked that other movie, not because you're excited to see what happens to these characters, but because you want that feeling of what it was when you first watched this movie 20 years ago, you know, with your college girlfriend or something. And so watching this movie feels sad. They're hitting you in the nuts saying, like,
Okay,
yeah,
thank
you're
you, Ethan.
old.
I have to cut you off there. Joe, you have 15 seconds to respond.
No, I'll agree. I think that is sad because you get that scene, like, you're here for nostalgia, and the scene that directly comes after that is them shooting heroin. And I've never been so depressed in a movie as that moment when I thought they had redeemed themselves and they go back to shooting heroin. So you know this movie is
All
aware
right,
of
Joe,
what it
thank
is,
you.
and it's
Thank you, Joe.
transcending
Thank you,
that.
Joe. Ethan, you have a final 15.
I'm just going to use that to say that Johnny Lee Miller never developed as a character enough for us to feel like he was okay with Spud leaving with $100,000. I'm going back to that. What I forgot to say.
Ethan, nobody
should be pissed!
Joe,
Nobody
do
gives
not-
a shit about that. You
Joe-
missed your chance.
Joe, do not interrupt. Ethan, you have an extra 10 seconds to
I
finish
don't
your
want
thought.
it. I forfeit. It's cool.
Yeah,
You're a
Joe's,
real-
My time, not the argument.
yeah, Joe's a jerk. So we're going to open up the floor for discussion.
Blow it in my mouth. What?
You guys have 4 minutes to discuss.
The reason this movie might feel a little subdued and a little tame compared to the first one is because it is. These are guys 20 years later after they were heroin addicts.
They don't have
They're
the
coming
energy.
back. They don't have the energy.
So it's not
But
as
that-
good as the other movie because they
I'm
don't
not
have
saying
the
that.
energy.
I'm saying it's a different movie. And I think on top of that, Danny Boyle did a really good job of getting the base feel and the base like tone of the other movie and transferring it to this new one. But it's a
It's
complete
like a whole segment of this movie that revolves around a Viagra joke, man. It's like we're
It
just
is completely
it's like we're
around.
watching the Full Monty again, but it's like 20 years later for that. It's like we're watching old dude strip instead of moderately old dude
Okay,
strip.
so your complaint is there's a 2-minute Viagra joke and peppered in this movie, this 2-hour movie.
I think you're trying to talk about bigger themes of this movie that
There are
lowers
bigger
itself
themes. There are much
to
bigger
such
themes in this
stupid jokes
movie.
and
And
centers
it's like,
so harshly
can-
around, look at us, we're older, and don't
Can
you
people
wish you were
change?
watching the other better movie?
Can people change?
No.
Does
they
your
can't.
past define you?
No.
That's not true because Renton changes. Johnny Lee Miller changed.
No, they don't
Spud
change.
changes.
They don't change. Just
The only
because,
character-
just
the only
because
character
there's a
that doesn't
scene where they're
change.
sitting there on the couch saying, "Oh, what's Spud doing? Is he writing stories? Cool." Instead of being pissed about being 100,000 pounds in debt,
Okay,
that does not
okay.
say that he changed. That shows that he
Ethan-
changed as a character on screen abruptly out of fucking nowhere. This is
You-
the same
Ethan, you
character
can go
that is
back.
waiting
Listen.
to backstab Ewan McGregor the entire fucking movie.
You can go
over
back.
4,000 pounds.
You can go back and complain about the 100,000 pounds as much as you want, but
It's
that is just aside the
significantly
point.
more than
That is
4,000
aside
pounds,
the
which
point.
led the rest
Because
of the
Spud,
movie.
Because Spud was shooting heroin at the beginning of this movie, and Renton comes in and convinces him that life without smack is better. And then you see the scene where Renton and Sick Boy are shooting heroin, and it slowly pans
Yes.
over, and there's Spud sitting there crying because he knows what they're doing to themselves, but he's now strong enough, he's changed enough to say no to
yeah,
smack.
yeah.
And that's probably
Yeah,
all
so-
he.
so
That's
they-
probably all he wanted in life. All he wanted in life was to go back and shoot heroin with his 2 best mates, and he has the opportunity, but he's smart enough and he's changed enough to not do it. And you're watching this
So the
character
best
change
character
throughout
to
the
focus
entire
on in this
movies.
movie would be Spud, but instead we spend 20 minutes focusing on them singing a stupid song in front of a bunch of fucking rednecks in Scotland.
Well, that's because they're scammers, and that was a hilarious scene.
There's a solid 20 minutes where they're trying to improvise a
also
song
not-
on a
it's not
stage.
20 minutes.
It feels like it belongs in Harold and Kumar.
Definitely not 20 minutes.
And these are the 2 assholes of
Probably
the
2 or
movie by
3
your own
minutes.
standards, and we should be looking at Spud. Instead, we
they're
get like
all
10
assholes.
minutes of
They're all
Spud.
assholes, and on top of the only
Okay,
character-
well then
the
make
only
them all
character who doesn't
assholes and
change,
make the
only
movie like
character who
Requiem
does
for a
not
Dream,
change,
where the
only
winner is
character who does
addiction.
not
Instead, in
change.
this movie, the winner is Spud, and they lose because they get addicted again.
Because Requiem, listen, they don't get addicted again, so they're not shooting heroin at the end.
We don't know that though. We
do.
say nothing about it in
No,
the
we
end.
do know that.
I want to see the scene where they're like, he took what? We have $100,000 in our name that we'll never pay back ever. Well, I guess I'm just gonna go back to my only friend, heroin.
That might have been the next scene. Who knows? But
I
that
want
doesn't
to
matter,
know.
because I want the scene where they're accepting that because of the shitty life they've led and how much they've fucked other people over. I want to
But
see
that's not what we
them
see. That's what you're
accepting
reading
that
into the
karma.
scene, but that's not what we see.
That's what you're supposed to you're supposed to interpret that way because movies are all about interpretation. That's a good movie, a good art, good books, any of it. It's up for interpretation. That's what this movie does. Nothing is force-fed to you. And just because you
Okay,
don't see, just because it's not force-fed to
It's
you,
up for
and it's not
interpretation.
dumbed down
Sure.
for you,
But
doesn't
there
mean
has
it's a
to
bad
be
movie. Just because you want it
some
spelled
sort of
out for
through
you
line that's
doesn't
gonna
make
take
it a
us
bad
to the
movie.
end
It
to
makes
show
it
us what the
an
movie
intriguing
was
movie.
supposed to be about. And
You don't know
instead
what
it
the
just
movie's even
says,
about.
here's just a couple of sketches that we threw together
Ethan wanted more
to
heroin.
show how these characters aged. They don't really fit well
I think this is the
together.
thing. You're complaining that this is just a rehash of the first movie, but with you arguing, all you wanted was the first
No,
movie
I'm
again.
complaining that this
so
movie-
you're bitching because this movie's not the first movie, but you're also bitching because they're the same
All
characters.
right, I'm going to cut you guys off there. What do you really think?
This movie's great.
Really great.
I loved it.
Me too.
I saw Fate of the Furious instead.
Yeah, Jeff has seen Fate of the Furious 7 times.
I'm shooting for 8.
Yeah, if he gets 8, it's the golden viewing.
I was very surprised with how great this movie was. Danny Boyle is still a phenomenal director. It was extremely well written. Everybody is fucking great in it. I'm so happy to see Johnny Lee Miller doing something other than Elementary lately. Thank Christ. So yeah, it's good. Go see it. I know it's super hard to find. We tried to see it 2 weeks ago and it was only in theaters for 5 days and then it, poof.
Yeah, I mean, if you're in a bigger, I guess like Spokane's not like a tiny city, but if you're in a bigger city than Spokane, it's probably in your city. If you're in a smaller city than Spokane, I guess you gotta wait for like Netflix or something.
Don't
Sorry,
tell
guys.
people where we live.
Do you guys want to know what Jeff's address is? The zip. No, it's good. And I mean, you knew this was a tall order because like Trainspotting has hit cult status. So once you hit cult status, it's really hard to like appease those fans. And this movie does it. And I think it will appease non-fans because I think it has enough in common with the first movie, and a lot of the jokes in T2, Trainspotting 2, are nods to the first movie. But I think there's enough going on, and the whole theme of this movie is completely different than Trainspotting. I guess if the whole theme, though, is choose life, then it's probably just the same movie.
And it's an extremely similar movie, but it's great. It deals a lot more with redemption of all of the characters and the sacrifices they made in life, as well as, you know, middle age. There's like a generational thing to this movie that was never in the other one, where, you know, they're thinking, what do I want to pass on to my kids, to my family? Do I want them to be better than me? That kind of thing. And that's prevalent through the very first scene of this movie with Spud. So that is the through line of this movie, is how do we teach the other generation to be better than us? And can we improve, or are we a lost cause at this moment? And that's largely what this movie is, and that's what makes it different than the other one.
I think also there's the line fairly early where Ewan McGregor, or Renton, is talking about how he has a
Metal stent
in his heart, right? And it's good for 30 years. And he's talking about how if they gave him 2 years to live, he knows what to do with that. Like, he could piss away 2 years with no problem and be content and happy, but he doesn't know what to do with 30 years. And it's that idea of the other movies, like we have our entire lives ahead of us, we're so excited. And in this movie, it's like, I have 30 years and like, I don't want that. Like, I don't like that much life is too much life for me. So it's like you're seeing it from those two perspectives, I suppose.
Very good.
Okay, well, what would you guys rate the movie?
I would give this one a 9 out of 10. A lot of thunder.
Same. 9 out of 10. Lots of thunder. Thank you. You can like and subscribe the video. You can also comment below if you'd like us to do a movie in the future. Request it, and you can write a question about it that we could debate on the episode. And hope you do that. Thanks!
And good night.